like and subscribe, and leave a comment below. Beyond Antarctica, Chapter 20. As John paced the deck of his ship, he muttered, "You know, at some point, I'm going to need some sleep. So, do you two mind telling me what you've been doing on the bow of my boat, making such a clatter and keeping an old man awake all night?" Todd started to respond. "Sir, we were just—" But John cut him off with a raised hand. "If you're not going to ask permission to do something, then I should be at least informed of what you're doing before you do it. Is that too much to expect? Am I not the captain? Do I not own this boat?" John's tone was firm. Bick interjected, "Technically speaking, John," but upon seeing John's stern stare, he quickly lowered his head and chose not to finish his sentence. John sighed, softening slightly. "I'm normally a forgiving man, but damn, boys, at some point a man needs to get some sleep. Do we have an understanding?" "Yes, sir," Todd and Bick muttered in unison. John's demeanor lightened as he rubbed his hands together. "Okay, just had to get that off my chest. So, are you going to tell me what you're up to? What's so important that you worked through the night?" He gestured towards the mess scattered about on the deck, tools, scrap metal, and a 4-foot by 4-foot box mounted to the railing of the ship. Tony, eager to explain, jumped in. "I had an idea about what to do with the contraption we've been working on," he said, quickly filling John in on their recent discoveries. He explained how they mounted the crystal skull above the contraption inside the box. When power is applied, it creates a tugging at the bow of the ship, pulling it through the water. John raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, okay," he said, examining the setup skeptically. "Enough with the jargon. I'm a simple man. Keep the lingo simple, would you?" Bick nodded. "It moves the boat, sir. More power, the faster it goes. We hardwired it to the bridge so Bob can operate it. It's basically a high-tech engine. We're working on another, more advanced model based on this prototype." With John's interest piqued. "Nice work, boys. Does this solve our fuel problems?" he asked. Bick replied, "As long as we're close to an obelisk. See this viewport in the box? If the skull is glowing at all, it will operate. Or we need to supply it with electricity, and it will operate. So yes, no fuel, or very limited fuel." John nodded, satisfied with the explanation. "I only need to know it works," he said, turning to walk away. "You should have opened up with 'we solved our fuel problem,' and there might not have been a lecture." John strolled onto the bridge just in time to see Bob skillfully bring the ship to a stop, harnessing the current like a surfer mastering a wave, yet the ship remained motionless. With a satisfied grin, Bob remarked, "I like this." John nodded. "Okay, but we have places to be." He eyed the window as Bob queried whether to pull in close or stay put. "You know the routine," John responded. "Park here, and we send in the dinghy." As John peered ahead, the river took a sharp bend, narrowing into what seemed like a lush jungle corridor, the daunting cliff faces blending into a vibrant thicket that met the barren landscape. Ahead, an imposing castle loomed, far grander than any they had encountered before, stationed strategically at the passageway between the two massive mountain ranges. "That castle," John mumbled, studying the scene, "appears to be guarding the only passage between the two sections of this massive continent, according to the maps they gave us. Many nations on this side, just one on the other." As he pointed to the map, "This is where their trade wall ends. It travels throughout their kingdom, stopping just before this castle," as he points off into the distant barren landscape. "Yeah, right there." Bob leaned in for a closer look, intrigued by the strategic implications. "Get Todd," John instructed crisply, "and tell him to meet me at the dinghy. This shouldn't take long. We will drop off the message and head back. No nonsense." Hours later, they returned. John relayed the day's events to Bob, mentioning the unexpected invitation. "Andor is getting married tonight, and we're all invited to the celebration." Bob raised an eyebrow. "I thought we were just dropping off the message and leaving, sir. You know, no nonsense." With a chuckle and a twinkle in his eye, John pulled out his flask and handed it to Bob. As Bob took a swig, his eyes lit up at the taste. "Wow, that's impressive. Smooth and that flavor," he murmured appreciatively, licking his lips. "Right? John agreed, taking the flask back for a sip. I'm having 10 barrels of this loaded into the cargo bay. He only asked for our presence at his wedding party tonight. Having a great sea wizard bless his union would look favorable with his people, John explained, and it would be rude to turn down the king, snickering slightly as he takes another swig, handing the flask back to Bob. Let everyone know we are expected shortly. Bob, you will stay with the ship with the deck crew. Bob replies, Roger that, sir, as John heads off. As Bick, Todd, Tony, and John sat in the dinghy, Kim approached, capturing everyone's attention. Tony, standing to welcome her, accidentally dropped the shotgun. The barrel tipped, striking John's leg. With a pained expression, John exclaimed, What the hell, boy? As he rubbed his leg. Amidst the commotion, Todd and Bick couldn't hide their awe. As Tony helped Kim onto the dinghy, Wow, just wow, he murmured. You look absolutely amazing, Kim. Kim was indeed a sight to behold. Her flowing blonde hair shimmered in the ship's artificial lighting, complementing her striking red low-cut dress that gracefully hugged her figure. The gold necklace and bracelets she wore added a touch of elegance, enhancing her stunning appearance. Caught up in the moment, Tony continued to admire her until John's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. Enough of that, men, he said firmly, turning their attention back to the task at hand. They all quickly took their seats. Tony mumbled under his breath, Yes, sir, places to be, things to do, but his eyes lingered on Kim a moment longer as John glanced over at Kim. Really, Kim? He asked. She met his gaze steadily. What, Dad? You know what I mean. Why the need to doll yourself up so much, love? John's tone was light, yet carried an undercurrent of fatherly concern. Kim's smile widened, with her eyes sparkling with excitement. Dad, it's every girl's dream to be invited to a royal ball. This is a dream come true for me. I just want to look the part, she replied, with her smile reflecting her genuine delight at the opportunity. The castle itself was a magnificent structure, with towering spires and flags fluttering in the breeze. The grand entrance to the castle was flanked by ornate statues, leading them into a bustling main hall decorated opulently for the royal wedding. The hall was a magnificent display of wealth and power, adorned with banners and tapestries that depicted the kingdom's storied history. Kim, dazzling in her elegant red dress and golden jewelry, caught the eyes of many as they made their way. Their arrival was announced with great ceremony, and they were ushered directly to the king's table, where they sat next to King Andor. The king utilized a translator device similar to his brother's, facilitating communication. Todd, holding on to their translator, listened intently as the king spoke. During the evening, Tony asked Kim to dance. Her eyes sparkled as she surveyed the festive atmosphere around them. Sure, why not? She replied with a smile as they moved to the dance floor. Soon after, the soon-to-be queen, a raven-haired beauty clad in feathers and golden jewelry, asked Todd to dance. Todd accepted, and they gracefully joined the other dancers. As John engaged in a deep conversation with King Andor, the king explained the precarious situation with King Boris, who controlled all the fertile lands and gold reserves on his side of the kingdom. Andor shared his concerns about Boris's tactics. He would offer food to nations cheap, just to raise prices, to economically dominate and enslave the other nations by manipulating food prices and trade policies. That's how he forced all the nations on his side of the continent to join his empire, making them dependent on his agricultural exports before hiking prices to insurmountable levels, effectively turning free people into vassals overnight. Nations that were once free willingly surrendered their sovereignty and joined his empire, enticed by his promise of economic relief. Now his empire is vast, spanning half the continent. I believe if we didn't impose taxes on him as we do, he would eventually dominate all the nations, and his empire would rule the entire continent. The conversation with King Andor took an inspiring turn as he demonstrated his magical prowess. Raising his scepter with a clear crystal atop, he commanded lightning to strike the obelisk, bathing the party in an ambient light. Amidst the dazzled crowd, Andor's voice boomed with authority. I have a message from my brother. He wants me to fall back and protect the wall, but I say no. We must send all our troops to hold the mountain keep that guards the pass. With both scepters of power here, Boris wouldn't dare attack. Knowing they're here, his men would flee in terror. Tell my brother to abandon his cowardly fallback tactics. We are outnumbered. That means meeting them where their numbers mean the least. At the Great Pass is our best strategy. Let him send all available troops to prepare for what's to come." The king leaned across the table, his gaze fixed on Kim, and remarked with a slight smirk, "Now aren't you a lovely creature? Would you like to join my harem, my abode of queens, and rule by my side? I can promise you wealth, power, and a life of excitement. What say you?" Kim blushed slightly at his proposal, but responded with a confident tone, "I like to be exclusive. If I can't be enough for my man, then there's no reason to stick around. Are you willing to dump the harem for me?" She smiled and gave the king a playful wink. Andor burst into hearty laughter, shaking his head. "No beauty of one creature is worth forsaking the harem of beauties I possess." With that, he called the end of the event, wished everyone a good evening, and left the room. As they boarded the Celeb Mariner, King Andor's men loaded 2 vats of the ale John had enjoyed at the party onto the dinghy. Once back on the ship, John directed the vats to the cargo bay and then joined Bob on the bridge to recount the evening's events. He explained that he had agreed to deliver a message for King Andor. "We have to head back that way anyhow. We'll leave in the morning." "Hey, what the hell? How did you—" "Nope, just nope. You're going back," Todd exclaimed in surprise as a raven-haired beauty emerged from one of the ale vats. "Please, I don't want to marry him. This is a forced marriage. He has hundreds of wives in his castle. I would just be another number to him. He already refers to me as woman. Woman, come here, do this, do that. It's humiliating," she pleaded. Just then Kim walked in, her eyes widening at the sight. "Todd, what the hell, man? I had nothing to do with this, Kim, I swear," Todd protested. Kim turned to the raven-haired woman, who introduced herself as Junto. "No, really," Todd insisted. "She was hiding in this." Junto continued with her voice trembling. "I'm often beaten if I don't comply with his every command. He is a tyrant." Kim's expression hardened. "I've heard enough. We will give you safe passage to the other end of your kingdom, nothing more. And we need to tell my father, ASAP, looking at Todd. The 3 hurried to find John, who was on the bridge chatting with Bob. They quickly filled them in on Junto's situation. John listened intently, but responded firmly, "Kim, I don't care what you promised her. She is going back first thing in the morning." Junto clung desperately to Todd. "Help me, Todd," she pleaded, gripping him tightly. Todd looked over at John. "Surely there's something we can do, John." Bob chimed in. "John, she does look desperate to not go back." John shook his head, resolute. "Nope, I'm not here to make enemies. Taking someone's wife to be, well, that tends to piss people off. Not just a normal mad. I'm talking about a vendetta kind of mad. Reminds me of Moby Dick. You know, Ahab style. I don't want to become anyone's white whale." She goes back. "Todd, take her to the mess hall and keep an eye on her. She is your responsibility until morning. Then we return her." As Todd ushered Junto to the mess hall for some food and drink, hours passed quietly until John spotted a figure on the bow. It was Kim, captivated by the luminescent waters that glowed eerily under the night sky. The water shimmered with fluorescent blue light, interspersed with ripples of rainbow colors as they lapped against the ship, resembling an infinite mirror of colors. John nodded at Bob. "Yeah, that's Kim. I'm going to see what she's doing." Bob responded with a simple, "Roger that, sir." As John approached Kim on the deck, he greeted her warmly. "Hey, Kim. Dad, it's good to see you. Look at the water. It's so beautiful. Isn't it mesmerizing?" John agreed. "Yes, it is, love," as he wrapped his arm around her in a tender father-daughter moment, both of them soaking in the tranquility of the evening. Suddenly, a commotion broke the serene night from the starboard side of the Celeb Mariner. John and Kim rushed toward the noise and arrived just in time to witness a violent struggle between 2 figures, their silhouettes clashing against the railing. The conflict escalated quickly, resulting in one person being flipped overboard. John shouted, "Stop there!" As he drew his knife and sprinted forward, Kim screamed, "Man overboard!" But before the words fully escaped her lips, a massive 20-foot crocodile emerged from the water, quickly joined by two smaller ones. The tranquil, colorfully luminescent river turned into a churning bloodbath in a gruesome feeding frenzy. Horrified, Kim turned away, unable to watch the brutal spectacle. She buried her face against John's chest as the river's magical lights were eclipsed by the dark reality of nature. From the chaos, Todd emerged, bloodied with deep scratches marking his face. "Todd, who was that you was fighting with?" Todd looked John in the eyes and said it was Junto, sir. Kim, in shock, confronted him. "Wow, Todd, just wow. How could you throw a woman overboard like she was nothing? What kind of man are you?" Her voice cracked under the strain as she pushed him forcefully, with her actions echoing across the river. "I'm sorry, Kim," Todd stuttered, with regret coloring his tone. "She left me no choice." John, with a stern expression, demanded, "Todd, you'd better start explaining, and quickly, old friend." The tension hung heavy in the air, amplified by the echo of Kim's earlier cries bouncing off the river into the silence of the night. Todd relayed the night's tumultuous events to John with a sense of urgency. "I did as you instructed for the most part, sir. I took her to the mess hall. We had some food. She tried coffee for the first time, and we chatted for hours until she fell asleep at the table. I leaned back and drifted off myself. When I woke up, she was gone," Todd began, his eyes flickering with the stress of the memory. He continued, "Naturally, I went looking for her, found her on the deck, shuffling through this and that, like she was searching for something. Before she could reach the barrels of slime, I confronted her. She tried to seduce me, pressing up against me, suggesting we find somewhere private." Todd paused, glancing at Kim, who interjected with a sharp look, clearly skeptical of his story. "She leaned in and licked my neck, so I pushed her off me." Kim replies, "Yeah, I'm sure you did, Todd." Todd pressed on, "No, Kim, I did. That's when I pushed her away and demanded to know what she was really after. She denied everything at first, but I didn't buy it. Called her a liar, and she snapped, kneed me in the nuts. I mean hard, then tried to throw me overboard, screaming about finding our secrets on how to travel the open seas. As I struggled to hold her, she confessed that King Aragorn had offered her the top spot in his harem, queen of all his wives, if she helped him. In her desperation, she pleaded for my help, saying she was sorry," Todd said, with the memory of the conflict vivid in his mind. "It escalated quickly from there. She made another attempt to throw me overboard just as you arrived, sir. Used all her strength, surprisingly fierce for her size. I barely managed to pivot on the rail and use it as leverage to stay aboard. And just so you know, if my face looks bad, you don't want to know what she did to my—" Todd winced, holding his groin. "Well, let's just say it was a close call in more ways than one." Kim grabbed Todd by the shirt, yanking him a foot forward into the dim light of the deck. She tilted his face gently, examining the scratch marks on his cheek. With a touch of humor to lighten the mood, she remarked, "Well, Todd, either you're telling the truth or you're a remarkably unfortunate lover." Her smirk briefly cut through the tension as she insisted, "You need to come to my medbay now. I have to take care of that." Meanwhile, John made his way to the bridge to update Bob on the unsettling events. "We need to get moving. The sooner we're out of here, the better," John declared with a sense of urgency. Bob raised an eyebrow. "You want me to navigate this river in the dark?" he asked skeptically. John shook his head with a determined look crossing his face. "No, I expect you to step aside and let me take over. Let's face it, I'm not getting any sleep tonight anyway." With that, he took the helm, with his eyes scanning the dark waters ahead. Weeks of travel later, as the Celeb Mariner entered the cove and neared the two keeps that marked the region's powers, John's voice rang clear over the intercom, signaling their next move. "Prepare to go ashore," he announced. John declared firmly, "Okay, I don't want to hear any arguments." He directed his stern gaze at Kim while continuing, "Only Bick and I are going. Load up the shotgun with only slugs. Bick, buckshot will do little against those knights if it comes to that." As John checked the ammo in his pistol, securing it in his belt loop, Kim interjected, with her concern evident. "Dad, couldn't we just move on? Why push our luck? We have everything we need." John looked up at Kim. taking a deep breath and sighing heavily. With a serious tone, he explained, "Look, I gave my word to this so-called Wizard King. There's still going to be a war, and a lot of lives depend on these two brothers being on the same page. The other king might indeed be questionable, that's true, and his motives murky, but Destin the Great didn't try to betray us. I know it's old-fashioned, but I still believe that a man needs to stand behind his word, or you don't give it. It's one of the foundations of who I am, love. To question that is to question the very fabric of my being. Until I see this king do us wrong, I will keep my word. Many lives lie in the balance, I remind you, and there are countless other reasons why a man needs to finish what he starts, but I'll leave it at that." As John and Bick arrived, they were treated like royalty, a fanfare that seemed to echo through the grand halls of the castle. John wasted no time and quickly relayed his brother's decision to hold the keep that guarded the mountain pass. Upon hearing this, the Wizard King, Destin the Great, let out a scream of frustration. "My brother's going to get us all killed. We don't have the numbers." John calmly explained that his brother believed the mere presence of the two scepters of power together would be intimidating enough to make the opposing armies retreat in fear. Destin paused, contemplating. Suddenly, Destin clapped his hands and commanded an aide, "Ready the army. Send them down the wall. Gather all guards along the way." As he made arrangements, he turned to John. "You will take me back." John, however, said, "I would love to help further, but we must be moving on. I have fulfilled all that I agreed upon." He bowed respectfully before the king. The king pressed, "Surely there is something you desire or need. My kingdom is vast, and all I ask of you is for a ride to get there fast." It was then that Bick interjected, leaning in to whisper to John, who looked puzzled by the interruption. Bick revealed, "There is one thing we lack, the red mercury substance." He pulled out a small bottle, showing it to John. "We can obtain regular mercury easily, but this substance is vital for our device to work. It acts like a fuel, powering the process. Ask if he can supply more of it." Taking the cue, John addressed the king, showing him the bottle. "We can only help you if you can provide more of this substance. Our magic depends on it, or we must move on in search of it." The king's eyes narrowed, contemplating the new terms. As the large wine bottle-sized jar filled with the rare red mercury substance was hurriedly delivered to them, the king pointed out, "This is all we have in the castle. It is indeed a very rare substance. We found this at the base of the mountain keep's obelisk, and no place else so far." John added one more stipulation. "There is one more thing. For the journey, only you will come aboard my ship. Your personal escort and guards will need to stay behind. Additionally, you'll need to remain confined to a room until we arrive. The ship is dangerous, and for your safety, you must take this." John handed the king a piece of candy, explaining, "Eat this. It will protect you while you are on my ship. Anyone who boards without having this will die. The magic there is powerful, I remind you," bowing before the king. The king, recognizing the gravity of John's words and the sincerity with which he delivered them, quickly complied and ate the piece of candy, sealing his fate and his trust in John's guidance. Back aboard the Celeb Mariner, with the king securely confined to a cabin, John convened the crew to update them on their new arrangement. Amidst the various updates, the moment that captured everyone's attention came when John held up the jar of red mercury. "We won't need to worry about fuel for a long time," he declared with a hint of relief in his voice. With their food reserves replenished, they set sail once more. On the bridge, only Bob remained with John, who seemed lost in thought. Breaking the silence, Bob ventured, "So, John, how are you planning to explain that thing? You know that thing that happened. We should really have moved on." John faced him squarely. "Why?" he said. "You know why." Bob pressed, "The soon-to-be queen is no more. How are you going to explain that one?" John sighed deeply with the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "I'm just trying to stop a massacre here, Bob. If they get past that mountain keep, it's over for them as a people, I fear." Bob shook his head. "Is it really our problem, though?" As John looked out across the water, he said, "To be honest, I was going to leave, but then Bick informed me about our needs and its rarity." This king has enough for us to last a very long time. We had little choice." He paused, his voice hardening. "I guess we could go shoot the king now, and toss him overboard and sail off into the wild blue. How would that sit with you, Bob?" Bob lowered his head with a frown creasing his brow. "Yeah, I'm not that kind of guy either, Captain," he replied solemnly. Weeks go by. As the Celeb Mariner navigated through the meandering river, John eyed the next bend, sensing the impending conclusion of their journey. "Hey, Todd, go tell the Wizard King to gather his things. Give him this piece of candy and tell him to eat it before he goes on deck. It'll replenish the magic that protects him," John instructed with a hint of urgency. Todd, puzzled, nodded and left to fulfill the request. Meeting them on deck later, John confirmed with Todd, "Did you do as I asked?" "Of course," Todd replied with a touch of skepticism in his tone. As the boat rounded the corner, the Wizard King urged them, "Hurry! Get me to shore!" Through his binoculars, John observed a massive army lining the jungle's edge, setting up siege equipment. "Looks like they're setting up for a siege. There are thousands, and I can't see what's in the forest," John announced. The king, puzzled by John's precise observations, inquired, "How do you know such things?" John responded, "This device lets me see great distances, as if they're close up." Curious, the king took the binoculars from John and peered through them. "Yes, there's more hidden in the jungle. He hasn't even brought out any of his war beasts yet." Bob glanced at John. "War beasts?" he said, seeking clarification. Lowering the binoculars, the king handed them back to John. "Yes, he is notorious for his ruthless use of war beasts." Suddenly, lightning struck violently from the clouds, targeting the top of the obelisk. John, peering through the binoculars again, narrated the unfolding drama. "It's your brother. He's on the keep wall, scepter raised over his head, now directing it towards the siege line. A thunderous bolt of lightning followed his command from the obelisk, striking the men assembling a catapult, leaving nothing but burnt embers in its wake. The entire siege line halted their efforts and fled into the woods. The king, now desperate, pleaded, "Get me to the keep now. He will not be able to fend them off for long. We need to hold until my reinforcements arrive." John ushered everyone to the dinghy. "Follow me, quickly," he commanded. They reached the other side of the keep, entering through a less conspicuous route. In the courtyard, the brothers reunited, swiftly devising a plan to withstand the impending siege, their actions underpinned by the rare unity of two rulers armed with their scepters of power and the hopes of their people. As they ascended to the top of the castle walls, John and Todd could see the hostile forces regrouping below. The siege line was forming once more, with enemy soldiers hastily assembling their siege equipment. Both brothers, standing with determined expressions, raised their scepters high. Lightning crackled, striking the towering obelisk at the center of the keep. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. It seemed like an eternity before. In a coordinated movement as if orchestrated by fate itself, both brothers pointed their scepters towards the siege line. There was a blinding flash of light, and a large section of the enemy line was instantly vaporized. The display of power was a clear message to any who dared challenge the kingdom. The brothers watched as their foes retreated. The Wizard King said, "Did you see how fast they ran?" They burst out in laughter. As the echoes of their laughter faded, King Andor turned to John with a serious expression. "Nice to have you back, John. I owe you my thanks for your help," he said sincerely. "No problem at all, King Andor," John replied. "However, there is a serious issue we need to address," King Andor informed John. "Oh, what might that be?" John asked. "It's about my queen-to-be. She seems to have gone missing the day you left. Any idea what might have happened to her?" King Andor asked. "After searching the castle grounds, my advisors suggested she might have sneaked onto your ship to escape. You know how it is with new wives-to-be. She probably got cold feet and ran off, scared. Have you seen her by any chance?" John looked him straight in the eye. "No, I can't say that I have. It's not possible to sneak onto my ship. It's protected by magic." He pulled out a piece of candy, explaining, "Anyone who doesn't eat this before boarding will instantly die. That's why we all carry these with us." King Andor looked puzzled, but the Wizard King interjected, reassuring his brother. "It's true. I had to take it multiple times on the journey here, or I would have died myself. Their conversation was abruptly cut short by a loud, thunderous roar that echoed through the air, followed by the sound of trumpets. They all turned toward the tree line where the jungle canopy shook violently, trees swaying with intense vigor. Eerie cries bellowed out, sending shivers down John's spine. The Wizard King sprang into action, shouting, "Man the walls! Here come the war beasts!" John's eyes fixed on the jungle's edge, anticipating what was about to emerge from the charred foliage. This is not goodbye, nor the end. Until the story continues, my friends. B.N.Rocker.